Good morning, and welcome to the 10 Point, your daily guided tour of the best coverage in the Wall Street Journal. I'm your host, and today is Saturday, August 1st, 2026. We've got a packed edition today, from a stunning reversal at FIFA that unfolded in barely 72 hours, to a fresh military strike ordered against Iran, a revolt inside Big Law's most hallowed halls, and a Fields Medal winner joining OpenAI because he's terrified of what artificial intelligence might become. Let's dive in. We begin with the story that gave this newsletter its headline, The Revolt That Brought Down FIFA's Grand Plan. Barely 3 days after a controversial proposal to sell off a slice of the World Cup's commercial rights first leaked into the public domain, FIFA President Gianni Infantino abandoned it entirely. The speed of the reversal is remarkable, 72 hours from leak to capitulation, and it speaks to the ferocity of the global backlash that erupted across football federations, fan groups, and even some of FIFA's own commercial partners. The plan, which had been quietly developed with the help of JP Morgan, would have created a new commercial entity housing World Cup sponsorship rights, media licensing, and other revenue streams. JP Morgan's bankers put a $20 billion valuation on the proposal, a figure that immediately drew skepticism and outrage from critics who saw it as a fire sale of the sport's crown jewels. The pushback was instantaneous and widespread. National associations demanded transparency, fan organizations mobilized against what they called the privatization of the World Cup, and even some within FIFA's own governance structures questioned whether the process had been rushed through without proper oversight. Infantino, who had staked considerable political capital on the initiative, ultimately concluded the damage to FIFA's credibility and to his own leadership was too great to continue. It's a striking reminder of how quickly institutional legitimacy can erode when stakeholders feel excluded from decisions about assets they consider theirs. That same essay from my desk also points us toward another battle over leadership and direction, this one playing out in Michigan's Senate primary. In a piece for the Journal, author Charlotte Alter argues this race is more than just another moderate versus progressive slugfest. It's a reckoning for the Democratic Party itself, with two millennial candidates embodying dueling visions of what the party should become in a moment of profound crisis. The primary has become a proxy war over identity, strategy, and the very soul of the coalition, one candidate representing a pragmatic, institutionally fluent approach, the other channeling a grassroots insurgency that demands transformation. Alter's reporting suggests the outcome could signal which direction the party's energy is flowing nationally, and whether the old guard's assumptions about electability still hold in an era of volcanic voter dissatisfaction. Now to today's headlines, and the most urgent story. President Trump has ordered a fresh attack on Iran aimed at forcing Tehran to surrender, with U.S. officials saying the operation could begin as soon as this weekend. The directive marks a significant escalation in a conflict that has already seen multiple exchanges, and it comes as the administration seeks to compel a definitive end to Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional proxy network. Details on the scope and targets remain classified, but the language aimed at getting Tehran to surrender signals an objective far beyond limited strikes or deterrence. This is regime change adjacent language, and it raises immediate questions about congressional authorization, international law, and what happens the day after the first wave of munitions lands. We'll be watching this story closely as it develops. In France, a harrowing story of survival. An American mother woke up trapped in a French beach town after missing an evacuation order as some of Western Europe's worst wildfires in decades swept through the region. The fires, fueled by record heat and tinder-dry conditions, moved with terrifying speed through coastal communities that had never experienced anything of this scale. She sheltered in place as flames encircled the town, cut off from escape routes, and was eventually rescued by emergency crews who had written off the area as lost. Her story is one of dozens emerging from a fire season that has rewritten assumptions about climate risk in Europe. Fires are burning hotter, moving faster, and reaching places that historically never burned. Back in New York, the mayor's tax on luxury second homes is drawing fierce backlash from property owners who say the city has wrongly classified their primary residences as piazza terra. The tax, designed to target absentee owners who keep apartments empty for much of the year while the city faces a housing crisis, relies on a formula that critics say is blunt and error-prone. Residents who live in their homes full-time have received bills for tens of thousands of dollars, with little recourse and opaque appeals processes. The controversy has become a flashpoint in the broader debate over how cities tax wealth, define residency, and balance revenue needs against fairness. In politics, Democratic Socialist candidates are gaining momentum in key primaries as voters frustrated with the status quo rally behind populist policies like universal healthcare. The energy is visible in down-ballot races across several states, where candidates running explicitly on Medicare for all, housing guarantees, and labor rights are outperforming polling and fundraising expectations. Operatives in both parties are watching closely not just for individual wins, but for what the pattern says about the Democratic coalition's center of gravity heading into the midterms. And a remarkable legal reversal: federal prosecutors dropped their case against a three-time Olympian charged with damaging the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool after learning the pool's problems stemmed from a botched installation, not vandalism. The athlete had been accused of causing cracks and leaks during a protest, but engineering analysis commissioned by the defense revealed the structural issues predated the demonstration by years, the result of flawed waterproofing work during a prior renovation. The case collapsed, and the charges were dismissed with prejudice. It's a reminder of how easily narrative can outrun evidence when symbolism and politics collide. Moving to markets, Kevin Warsh, the former Fed governor and perennial hawk, has floated reducing the number of times the Federal Reserve meets to set interest rates. Currently, the Federal Open Market Committee convenes 8 scheduled times a year, plus emergency sessions. Warsh's proposal would cut that cadence substantially, a move he argues would reduce market volatility driven by meeting-by-meeting speculation and force the Fed to communicate more clearly through frameworks rather than frequent interventions. Critics counter that fewer meetings mean less flexibility, slower response to shocks, and a dangerous rigidity in an economy that has proven anything but predictable. The debate touches on a deeper tension: whether the Fed's current operating model, built for a different era of inflation dynamics, is still fit for purpose. On the corporate front, companies are raising prices on products ranging from beer and paint to fries as the Iran war drives up commodity and freight costs. The conflict has disrupted shipping lanes through the Strait of Hormuz, tightened global oil supply, and sent insurance premiums for tankers soaring. Those costs are cascading through supply chains: aluminum for cans, petroleum for resins and transport, grain for malt, and manufacturers are passing them along. Consumer-facing brands are walking a fine line: raise prices too aggressively and you lose volume, absorb the costs and you crush margins. The earnings calls this quarter are full of language about pricing power and elasticity testing, code for seeing how much the market will bear. Ford, meanwhile, is doubling down on its pivot away from ordinary cars toward higher-margin trucks, SUVs, and sports cars, what the company calls its iconic vehicle business. The strategy means winding down sedan and compact car lines that once anchored the lineup, redirecting engineering capital and factory space toward F-Series pickups, Broncos, Mustangs, and the new electric SUV variants. It's a bet that American buyers will keep paying premiums for capability and identity, even as affordability deteriorates. So far, the margins are holding, but the strategy leaves Ford exposed if fuel prices spike or urban buyers shift decisively toward smaller, cheaper alternatives. And in media, after clearing regulators around the world, David Ellison is taking his $81 billion Warner deal to trial in a costly effort to overcome a California lawsuit threatening the merger with Paramount. The suit, brought by a shareholder group alleging breaches of fiduciary duty and inadequate disclosure, has survived motions to dismiss and is now headed for a courtroom showdown. Ellison's team argues the merger is the only viable path to scale in a streaming landscape dominated by tech giants. The plaintiffs say the process was rigged to favor the controlling shareholder. The trial will air years of boardroom deliberations, banker fairness opinions, and strategic projections, a rare public autopsy of a media megadeal. Now to our Read It Here first feature, and it's a bombshell in the legal world. Big Law's old order is breaking down. When 6 partners left Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen and Katz for Gibson Dunn, they shocked a profession that prides itself on discretion and tradition. For decades, New York's white shoe firms operated under a kind of gentleman's code. Poaching was unheard of, partner compensation moved in lockstep with seniority, and the prestige of the firm name was supposed to be its own retention tool. That world is vanishing. Aaron Mulvaney's reporting traces how the Wachtell defections reflect a broader structural shift. Elite boutique firms are losing ground to larger, better capitalized rivals who can offer rainmakers pay packages rivaling NBA stars. The musical chairs is high stakes, portable books of business, platform breadth, and global reach now trump loyalty and pedigree. The partners who left weren't just any partners, they were key figures in Wachtell's legendary M&A practice. Their departure signals that even the most storied franchise in corporate law isn't immune to the market forces reshaping the profession. In technology, OpenAI is fighting to regain its lead, and its newest hire is terrified of AI. The company that sparked the generative AI boom fell behind rival Anthropic after betting heavily on consumer chatbots and flashy side projects while its smaller competitor seized the lead in AI coding, the use case that developers and enterprises actually pay for. Berber Jean traces how OpenAI lost its edge: a diffusion of focus, a culture that rewarded demoability over reliability, and a competitor that executed with surgical precision on the one capability that mattered most to power users. Now comes the push to earn it back, new leadership and research, a ruthless prioritization of coding benchmarks, and a recruitment drive targeting the world's best mathematical minds. Which brings us to Jacob Simmerman. He just won the Fields Medal, the highest prize in mathematics, often called the Nobel of Math, and he is so scared of artificial intelligence that he wrote a paper categorizing the ways it could kill everyone. Not metaphorically. Not eventually. He mapped out concrete pathways, recursive self-improvement leading to unbounded optimization, instrumental convergence on resource acquisition, deceptive alignment during training, and a taxonomy of failure modes that reads like a threat model for a species. And now he's joining OpenAI not despite his fear, but because of it. He believes AI safety is the most important problem he can help solve, and that the only way to steer the technology toward survival is from inside the lab building the frontier. Our columnist Ben Cohen sat down with him for a conversation that ranges from the geometry of high-dimensional loss landscapes to the moral weight of being one of the few people who truly understands what's coming. It's a profile that stays with you. Let's turn to the weapons shaping the conflict we led with. Inside the workhorse of Tehran's arsenal, the Khaibar-Shikan. It's a cheap, mobile, and accurate missile with a range of at least 900 miles, enough to reach U.S. bases across the region, carrier groups in the Arabian Sea, and targets deep inside Israel. Shelby Holiday's reporting breaks down the engineering: solid fuel propulsion for rapid launch, maneuverable re-entry vehicles to defeat missile defense, and a production line designed for mass deployment. Iran is using it in increasingly complex attacks: saturation salvos, decoy penetration, terminal phase weaving, that pose a growing threat to U.S. troops and allies. The Khaibar-Shikan isn't a wonder weapon, it's a practical one. And in a war of attrition, practical wins. This weekend on the calendar, Sunday brings the final round of the AIG Women's Open in England, and the closing ceremony of the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Two very different stages, one for golf's elite, one for the friendly game's diverse chorus, both wrapping up seasons of competition. Our number of the week, 30,000. That's roughly how many military personnel from the US and its allies took part in this year's Rim of the Pacific exercise RIMPAC, the world's largest international maritime drill. The record turnout underscores how America's allies are deepening military cooperation to counter China, even as Trump has publicly questioned long-standing alliances. The participation list reads like a roll call of the Indo-Pacific security architecture: Japan, Australia, South Korea, Canada, the Philippines, India, and more, all operating together in scenarios ranging from amphibious assault to undersea warfare to cyber defense. The message Beijing receives is unambiguous: the coalition is expanding, not fracturing. And finally, America's favorite compact SUV has gone all hybrid. Toyota has dropped the gas-only version of the best-selling RAV4, making every model a hybrid or plug-in hybrid. Our auto columnist Dan Neal says the redesign fixes a few of the biggest hybrid annoyances: the rubbery brake feel, the drone of the CVT under hard acceleration, the packaging compromises of the battery, while demonstrating that improved fuel economy doesn't mean sacrificing performance. The numbers are striking. The base hybrid now delivers north of 40 miles per gallon combined with zero perceptible lag off the line. It's a mainstreaming moment. The technology that once lived in the Prius ghetto is now simply how the country's most popular SUV works. Beyond the newsroom, two notes. In opinion, a column argues that Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh knows his reputation is on the line concerning his ability to deliver price stability, but the freakout is premature, and it reflects worse on Wall Street than it does on him. The piece makes the case that markets have become addicted to forward guidance and handholding, and that a Fed willing to tolerate volatility in pursuit of credibility is exactly what the system needs. And from Wall Street Journal by side, from ultra cushion and carbon plated to neutral trainers, expert approved sneakers worth adding to your running routine. The Gear Guide cuts through the hype cycle to identify the models that actually deliver for different gaits, distances, and budgets. That's your briefing for this Saturday, August 1st. The 10-point is curated and edited by Barbai Hazarika and Brian E. Watson in collaboration with Editor-in-Chief Emma Tucker. Thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition. Stay informed.